how's it going, all my tacticians? And I'm going to be talking to you about the win conditions involving Pokemon. So, the team you're looking up here at the moment is going to be the team that, last Friday night throwdown, people were just having a lot of hard time, people. So, first of all, I'm going to be talking about this team. This is an evolution-themed team, in case you didn't know it. So first of all, the team members we're going to be looking at is just regular Eevee, EVMZ, and these are, I believe, their correct natures. Yes, they are. These are also the IV-EV spreads that they have. So first of all, we're going to be looking at Eevee. So it's just a basic standard Eevee that's going to be, trading off going for the EVMZ boost, going for the extreme Evo boost, and then passing it off to one of my team members. So, standard Eevee there. Then we got a Life Orb Flash Fire Flareon. So it's going to be an adamant nature. It's going to be going for the Life Orb, I said. And basic premise of this Flareon is going to be, getting faster with the Flame Charge, going for the Flare Blitz, Return, Detect, etc, etc. Then we've got Jolteon with Flame Orb and Quick Feet with Detect, Discharge, Shadow Ball, and Volt Switch. Pretty standard there. And Timid Nature with Max Speed, Max Special Attack. Then we're moving on to my Umbreon. My leftovers Umbreon with Synchronize. Going for an Adamant Nature, Max Attack, Max Special Defense. Putting 4 EVs into HP. But he's going to be running Detect, Refresh. I already mentioned the leftover. He's going to be going for Faint Attack and then Moonlight. So that's going to be that Umbreon moveset. Then we got my Focus Sash Espeon with Magic Bounce, Dazzling Gleam, Sunny Day, Morning Sun, and Psychic Attack. With a modest nature, not timid, going for the max speed, max special attack. These are pretty straightforward movesets for them all. And then finally, we got Sylveon with Choice Specs, Pixelate, Hyper Voice, Moonblast, Trump Card. I don't know why I like putting Trump Card on things, but there's Trump Card, Sylveon, and Psyshock. Going with a modest nature as well. With a max special attack, max special defense, and 4 EVs into HP. Pretty standard, pretty similar moveset to, I believe it was my Umbreon, only different. Instead of physical attack, it's a special attack. And that's pretty much the standard. That is pretty much all the team members. However, the reason why I'm talking about this team in particular is because last week this team went completely undefeated. And I think that's because people, they could not figure out what the win condition of the team is. So, in a few seconds I'll be going over that in 3, 2, 1, boop! And boop! So, here's how it's going to go. I'm going to be using a couple of my friends here. They're going to be talking about, or they're going to be helping me demonstrate what I mean by the win conditions of any kind of battle. So, first of all, we're going to examine what it is the difference between the early game win condition and the late game win condition. Because these are two different win conditions that people get mixed up, quite a bit. Especially when they're thinking about, like, say in the early game or the late game. So we're looking at early game win condition. First of all, when people think early game win condition, they're thinking, like, say for example, setting up a sweep. They're going to be using one Pokemon and they're going to try to use that one Pokemon to sweep through the opponent's Pokemon, as many of them as possible. They're going to try to set up the field and control the battle order of Pokemon, similar to how people set up like trick rooms and such. However, when people think late game win condition, they're thinking, for example, they're trying to eliminate priority threats and establishing the field control. So for example, let's say they have a pheromosa in the background. I'm just gonna use my pheromosa. If you're gonna run pheromosa, the things you're gonna want to get rid of are Pokemon with priority moves or Pokemon with or choice scarfs. So because those are like one of the only two Pokemon or two types of Pokemon that can really take care of a pheromosa. You're going to want to get them out of the way. Especially psychic types and fairy types. Those are Pokemon that, really don't want to, that pheromosa doesn't really want to deal with. Especially flying types, for example, Talonflame. Pheromosa doesn't want to deal with them. That's what people are thinking late game. So they're going to try to eliminate as many threats as possible and reduce the opponent's options to battle more effectively over the long term of a game. So for like say 10, 12 turns late in the game, that's how late they're thinking. And speaking of how many turns, we're going to be looking at what are the, how many turns, when do you know you're in what stage of late game, mid game, early game, for example. So, first of all, the first 4 turns, at least in my eyes, especially concerning double battles, are the early game. So this is the stage where you're thinking, you're looking at the field, you're counting how many Pokemon are on the field, how many they have in reserve. You're trying to set up the field in some way, set up the terrain, get entry hazards set up. That's when you're thinking, okay, so let's see if I can use this Serperior to sweep through my opponent's Pokemon. Let's see if we can just use a Blacephalon and try to blow everything on the field and just blow them up. So, first 4 turns, in my opinion, this is again my opinion, take it as you see it, are going to be the early game turns. Then you got your mid game turns. So these are like turns 5 through 8. So you got your teams are both, both players' teams are, getting kind of weak in the numbers departments. You've lost a couple of Pokemon. You're down to like maybe 2, 3, depending on how many Pokemon are, allowed throughout the whole battle. Whether it's VGC, in the case of VGC, maybe you're down to 2 Pokemon and your opponent's also down to 2. Or if it's just a standard battle and you're just having fun, you're going to be using up to 6. So maybe you're down to 4, maybe 3 Pokemon at most or least. That's when you're looking at mid-game. That's when you're looking at the mid-game. You're thinking, alright, I gotta start thinking really long-term. I'm gonna try to get rid of this Pokemon because this one is giving me a lot of problems. I need to get rid of this one, so you're gonna be focusing that one down. And maybe you'll lose another Pokemon in the long run, or in the short term. But in the long run, you'll be removing the immediate threat. You're going to be dealing with the most problematic, threat to your team. Then you're looking at the late game. This is when battles are really going the long game. So these are for those who are stalling out. They're thinking long term. They're not thinking the first 4 turns. They're not thinking the mid 4 turns. They're thinking about the last 4 turns and beyond. So what do I mean by late game? I'm thinking, that Snorlax, who has been setting up curses non-stop, just healing himself up with berries. He's just using Amnesia Curse, resting, and then, recycling a berry, for example. He's getting help from like a healing pulse Pokemon, and that is what I mean by the late game. The people who play for the late game are really playing for the late game. They're setting up their Pokemon to endure as many hits as possible, take as much damage as possible, to be able to deal that same amount of damage that they're taking in spades. So that is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about late game. And when I'm talking about late game and mid game, early game, there are very different win conditions for each game. And speaking of that, we're going to be looking at 2 different kinds of Serperiors. In this case, first of all, we're going to be looking at the early game Serperior. So early game Serperior, people who bring out, like, say, we're using Serperior here because it's a really good example of a Pokemon that changes its role depending on if it's brought out really early on in a fight or, middle to later into the fight. So we're going to be looking at early game Serperior. So pretend this is a singles battle and we're bringing in our Serperior. It's 6v6. We're sending it out straight away. Early game Serperior is intending to snowball. It's going to power up its special attack by throwing out the Leaf Storm, and it's aiming for massive early KOs. It's going to try to sweep as many of the opponent's Pokemon as possible. Say 2, maybe 3. If it can manage 3, then that's a good day for that Serperior. If it can get 2, it could have done better, but hey, it's not going to complain. But if it gets 4, if it gets 3 or more, then that Serperior is definitely really, really powerful, and it's just becoming unstoppable. However, when we look towards late game Serperior, I'm sorry about the images moving up and down slightly, but if you're thinking late game Serperior wants to finish off these priority threats with its powerful speed and its powerful ability. It's intending to snipe those opponents that its trainer is having difficulty with. So for example, your Landorus that, aren't Choice Scarf, but instead Choice Bandit or so. That's what I'm talking about. Your really dangerous threats that Serperior can outspeed and power down because they're weak enough for it. And it can, get that free KO, get that free stat boost. And of course, it's brought in against foes it has no fears of. Because the Pokemon that it fears, your Talonflames for example, they're already gone, so it doesn't have to fear those kind of threats. Now, when we're talking about win conditions, there are a few rules that all win conditions abide by. So first of all, the first rule of win condition is that they change every battle, and I mean every battle. So let's just say in one battle your win condition would be to prevent your opponent from setting up a trick. That would be a win condition right there. Or maybe you're trying to deal with this one team and its major threat is like a pheromosa. That's where the opponent is putting all their baskets or their eggs into one basket. So if you can get rid of the pheromosa, then that's pretty much it. That's the end of their entire battles or their entire battle plan. They can't outspeed you, they can't outdamage you. That's it. Their major power is gone. Another one, which is something I talked about earlier when I was talking about my evolution team, that people were having difficulty with my evolutions, and that was because one of the biggest threats was my Eevee. If they had simply gotten rid of the Eevee, or just gotten rid of the Eevee, that would have been it. Now, moving on to rule number 2, it's different for every trainer. Like I said, one of my biggest threats, or one of my biggest win conditions, was getting the Eevee out onto the field. If I could get my Extreme Evo boost up, if I could get it out there, and if I could just get it into the fight, or get the boosts off successfully and then give it to a Pokemon that could make use of it, then that was pretty much it. There was very little that my opponent could do to stop me. Now, we're moving on to rule number 3. It varies depending on the current stage of a battle. So, like I said before, depending on if it's early stage, mid stage, or late stage, early game, mid game, late game, the rules of win conditions change. So it can be either you're trying to sweep your opponent with one Pokemon, for example, like I said, I talked about Pheromosa. Perhaps it's your Pheromosa just sweeping aside your opponent with just the Beast Boost and just KOing everything in one shot. That would be an early stage win condition. Or maybe it's your late game. For example, setting up that Snorlax with curses and amnesias, and using heal pulses from ally Pokemon and ally switching it so that it can get those defenses off or those abilities off. Now, one of the things I'm having difficulty in this video talking about is, how do I explain it? How can I explain this visually? Because as I said, it changes. It's always different. It's different for every trainer. It varies depending on the stage of a battle. It changes every battle. How can I possibly explain this? And the answer? With Steve and the Porygon family! Woohoo! So here's how it goes, people. There's this little game. It's a little subtraction game. It's a math game that I watched happen several years ago. It's like Cyber Chase. It was one program. But in any case, the rules of this game are pretty simple, and it helps you learn, or it helps you teach other people, and it helps you learn how to spot the win condition. So the rules of this game is simple. First of all, it's 2 people actually. Yeah, it's a maximum number of 2 people. Each player will remove up to 3 Porygon 2s from the circle. So you can remove 1, 2, or 3, but no more than 3 at a time. And whoever's left with Steve, that's Steve the Porygon, not Porygon 2. Whoever is left with Steve loses the game. Now, just to play this little game, I asked my channel artist to help me play with this. So, as you can see on the left, there is a lovely drawn Reshiram, and then on the right, you have a cleverly drawn pastel picture. So, sorry, pastel, but this was the best I could do. So, I played this little game with her. It was a pretty short game, Yeah, there's only 15 Porygons. One of them being just a regular Porygon, the rest being Porygon 2. But in any case, we played this game. So turn 1, I'm taking 2 Porygon 2s. Then she takes, or then she takes 3, I take 3, she takes 1, I take 1, then she's forced to take 1, and I take the other 3, and she's left with Steve the Porygon. So, how did this happen? How did I win this game? Well, simple, because I know what the win condition is. So, first of all, the win condition for this game that I'm showing you, this game that I just taught you the rules, is 5. 5 Porygon. Whoever is left with 5 Porygons, 4 Porygon 2s and 1 regular Porygon, will always lose. So whoever is stuck trying to pick from these Porygons is going to lose, because no matter what that person does, all the first player has to do is pick the remaining Porygons, and the next player, or the next turn, that player is stuck with the Porygon that loses. So that is what this game teaches you. It teaches you about the win condition. It teaches you how you have to reduce your opponent's options, at least when it concerns the long game, to a certain position where no matter what they do, they cannot win, and all you have to do is just sweep right on in, fly right on in, and take the win. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a thing or two about win conditions, and I hope you don't let the Eevee set up and lose the battle. I will see you tacticians another day. Bye bye!